Hey folks, when I originally did my review of the Springfield Range Officer Champion, I said that I would do a quick video at the same time demonstrating the use of the sight pusher that I used to push out the rear sight, since I wasn't happy with the 6 o'clock hold that the Champion is set up for, and I wanted to put a lower rear sight in. Of course, I got back from the range and was eager to swap the sights out, swapped them out, and then remembered I was supposed to videotape it. So guess what? You're not going to see that. But I will give my impressions of the sight pusher that I use. This is the XL handgun sight tool from Fisher Solutions, and it's available at www.sightpusher.com. That's SIGHT pusher.com. And this is the XL version. It's half an inch taller and half an inch wider than their standard version, and it comes with a couple of extra shims and blocks and things like that for fitting it to various slide shapes and sizes. You know, there's some shims to set up different heights in here. A whole bunch of little parts. Haven't really used any of those. Don't really bother. Although I have used this for a variety of different slides, Walther, Sig, Springfield, a bunch of other 1911s, Glock. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've tried this on. And it has worked successfully on all of them. So the way it works is there's a pusher that's connected to this cross bolt here. And as you turn the bolt, the pusher moves in one direction or the other. You'll see that the pusher does have an angled side right here for Glock sights, and it has a flat side for standard sights. So if you wanted to use this with, for instance, this Glock, I'm not going to bother taking the barrel out and all that, but you can see, hopefully, if the light doesn't get too reflective, that angle there is going to mate up and push that sight right out. And if I had this all the way on the other side, you know, it would be hitting the flat side. So I've seen one review where somebody gave this pusher mediocre reviews, and he dinged it on two different fronts. One was this arrangement here of these bolts. He wanted to use a socket set to adjust this, to crank on this bolt here. And when this wing nut that tightens the slide and locks it into place was all the way tightened on his, it ended up just vertical like that. So when he went to approach with his socket wrench, he didn't have enough clearance off of that. Well, I'm not going to ding the sight pusher from that. I think that everybody should have a crescent wrench or an open-ended wrench in their toolbox. If you don't have one of those and you're a gun enthusiast, maybe you have a AR-15 multi-tool that conveniently enough fits right on that. There's plenty of solutions that will work around not being able to get a socket set on there. So that, in my opinion, is not a legitimate complaint at all. His second complaint, I think, is a little bit more legitimate, but it's something that's easy enough to work around, which he didn't bother to do, and that is that if you take a look at the way that the slide would sit in here, if I crank this down to lock a slide in, you can see that the slide would not be centered in the sight pusher. It's going to be over to, say, this side here. Now what that means is that if I'm pushing this out with the angled side of the sight pusher, I have plenty of clearance to push it out that way. However, if I want to slide a new sight in, I can't slide it in from this side because that's going to use the flat side rather than the angled side. and I can't push it in from this side because there's not enough clearance here. And simply turning this over won't fix the problem because the angled side is still over here, and this slide is going to be all the way to this side. So there's, by simply flipping this around, that's not going to get past that problem. That said, if you're pushing on the flat side, the way this shipped out of the box, and you want to use the flat side, there's plenty of clearance to push it out and push the new one in using the flat side consistently. However, if you want to push in an angled connector, the way I would suggest doing it is to remove this lock nut on here, take this bolt out, and turn this pusher around. That would mean that essentially you're going to have all of this clearance over here. This is going to move all the way to this side, and you'll have plenty of room to push in the new sight. So it's perfectly capable of pushing in using the angled connectors. You just might have to turn the pusher and face it the other direction. With the exception of pushing out one angled sight, I haven't tried to push in any angled sights. I've always been pushing in flat ones, including on glocks. So I haven't had to turn it around, but that's how I would do it if I had that problem. And just as a finishing note, all this black stuff on this lower block didn't ship that way. This was sitting on my workbench, and something got on there. So that's not a finish issue. As for the effectiveness and how strong it is and how much leverage you can apply, there have only been 2 guns that I was not able to push the sights out with this simply by putting the slide into the pusher, throwing a wrench on here, just holding this by hand and turning this. So there are only 2 that were so tight that I couldn't do that. One was my SIG P229. The rear sight required that I mount this into a vise because I just couldn't hold it tight enough, and then this wrench was fine. And the second one was actually the range officer. That sight, I have never come across a sight that was jammed into the dovetail that tight. I mean, this is beyond red Loctite. This is beyond super glue. This was mechanically in there, just ridiculously tight. So instead of, I tried it first with this, and I had this sitting in my vise, and I'm, kind of cranking on the bolt. You always want to turn it from the bolt side here, by the way, not from the lock nut side. But I'm sitting here trying to crank on it with this little crescent wrench. Wasn't getting the job done. Upgraded to this wrench. This got the job done. So with this, I was able to break that sight free, and it wasn't just a matter of getting it initially moving. I mean, I had to use this big wrench all the way through the process of getting that rear the sight out of there. And as you can see, this was certainly up to the task and was more than adequate. So as for lining up the sight pusher, you can rest the sight on this lower block right here to set the height. If you need it a little bit higher, they suggest maybe taking a little bit of cardboard or something, or if you happen to have a shim that's supplied that's just the right size to move it up. I think the easiest way of doing that is actually to use your vise, and instead of even bothering with these lower blocks at all, I just have them in there because that's for the purpose of this video. I usually don't even bother to put those in. You just crank this into your vise like so, and I'm using this paper not to protect the sight pusher, but to protect the slide from the vise, and the same way that you would use a piece of cardboard around the back of the slide to protect it from the sight pusher in there. Now once this is in the vise like so, let's see if I can get this on camera. So once this was in the vise, now the vise jaws themselves can be used to set the height. So depending on how far down, up or down, you set this in your vice jaws, you can just rest it right on that. And that actually makes it very easy to use this, because it means that, let's say that you want to push the old sight out. So you've got your sight in, you've got your slide in here, you push the old sight out, and now you can just take this out. You can clean up the dovetail and get any old Loctite out of there, or grease, or if you use some sort of an oil to loosen up the sight or help push it out, clean that out of there, and then you can simply take it, and if you want to turn it around and bring it in from the other side, you don't have to fiddle with the height because it's already set up in your vice, and then you just crank it down tight and push the new sight in, and you're done. Since I've gotten this thing, I haven't even thought about taking a drift or punches to a sight. This just comes out right away, and I have changed the sights, put them in, taken them out, either for refinishing the slide, or I wanted to push the sight over just a little bit to adjust it for windage, or I wanted to just try a different style sight altogether. I wasn't sure. Being able to do the sight changes at home make a world of difference, rather than having to concern yourself with going to a gunsmith every time, or your local gun store who's got a sight pusher or whatever. So for the money, this is, as a universal sight pusher, I think is a great tool. Is it perfect? No. Is it as good as a $400 professional gunsmith tool with custom fitted blocks? Absolutely not. But is it a great tool for the home and occasional use tinkerer? Absolutely. And I would unequivocally recommend that. Now, that's the XL. I don't have any experience with the standard one, because I just ordered the XL out of the block. And I feel like there might have been one sight job that I did where that extra ½ an inch of the XL came in handy and might have prevented me from using the smaller one. So it's really just a size issue. As for all of these additional little pieces that, some of which come with the regular one, but you definitely get more with the XL model. I haven't used any of those. I pretty much just keep it like this, or take these out entirely and just chuck it into the vise and get to work. And so anyway, that's a quick look at the sight pusher from Fisher Solutions. Again, their website is www.sightpusher.com. I have no affiliation with them. Just a satisfied customer, satisfied user, and that's it. Thanks for watching.